Let's move on to another batch of verbs that do a bit of changing when they conjugate, specifically the E to IE stem changing verbs, also known as one of the boot verbs. Let's back up a bit and do a bit of a review. If you recall, verbs in Spanish are in the infinitive form before they are conjugated. That's the form you find in the dictionary, the to form, the form before it's conjugated, the form that ends in one of three ways, AR, ER, or IR. Let's take a look at some examples. And again, these are regular conjugating verbs. Nadar, AR verb. Comer, an ER verb. Vivir, an IR verb. Now, what do you remember about how to conjugate a regular verb? First of all, in all conjugations, you begin by chopping off that infinitive verb ending, the AR, the ER, or the IR. You're then left with the stem. For nadar, the stem would be NAD, for comer, COM, for vivir, VIV. Then you simply add the appropriate ending onto that stem, depending on the subject. Let's conjugate the regular verb nadar in the present indicative, the form for what's going on right now. Repita. Nado, nadas, nada, nadamos, nadais, nadan. Let's just say the regular AR verb endings. O, as, a, amos, ais, an. And moving on to comer, repita. Como, comes, come, comemos, coméis, comen. Let's say those regular ER verb endings. O, es, e, hemos, eis, en. And finally, a regular conjugation for an IR verb. Repita. Vivo, vives, vive. Vivimos, vivis, viven. Let's say those endings. O, es, e, imos, is, en. Of course, you'll notice in the IR, regular IR verb conjugations, 4 of them are just like the ER conjugations. The changes happen in the nosotros and vosotros forms. Now, there are other Spanish verbs that use the same endings as the regular AR, ER, and IR verbs that you see here, but they also have a small change in their stem. And once again, keep in mind the stem, when I use that term, is the part of the infinitive that is left over after you remove those infinitive endings, AR, ER, and IR. To review, because we've already worked with one stem changing verb, there are 3 types of stem changing verbs in the Spanish language: E to IE, O to UE, E to I. Now, we've already worked with the O to UE stem changing verbs, some of them. For example, poder, yo puedo. Encontrar, tú encuentras. So if you recall those, that O is changing to the UE in the stem. We're now going to move on to the E to IE stem changing verbs, which, by the way, is the most common of the stem changing verbs. There are more of those than any other. Also remember in this review that after conjugation, 2 forms remain regular conjugations. Do you remember which 2 forms those are? The nosotros and the vosotros forms. So these are the E to IE verbs that we're going to be working with. So the first thing we need to do is put a little memory in order here and remember some of these verb infinitives for verbs that change E to IE. Now you just have to memorize that this is a stem changing verb. And these are common ones. Repita, cerrar, cerrar. En inglés, to close. Repita, comenzar, comenzar. You'll add the a after it in some cases. And you recall what comenzar means? To begin. So if you think of a commencement in somebody's life at graduation, that is the beginning of their new life after their schooling. Repita, empezar, empezar, which will also take an a afterwards, depending on how it's used, which also means to begin. So we have that in English too. We can say, I begin the lesson, I start the lesson, I commence the lesson. So they're words that mean the same thing. Repita, entender. Entender. To understand. Sort of a cognate there. Repita, pensar. Pensar de. Pensar en. Now the meaning changes depending on whether you use de or en. Pensar de means to think of, to have an opinion about. ¿Qué piensas de? Pensar en means to think about, to ponder, to consider. Okay, so pensar. Moving on, repita, perder. Perder, which means to lose. Perder. Repita, preferir. Preferir. Nice cognate, to prefer. Repita, querer. Querer. To want, to love. Te quiero means I love you. Te quiero. Sentir, repita, sentir. Sentir means to feel. So when you say lo siento, you're really saying I feel it. You know, I'm feeling that emotion. Sentir. And finally, repita, venir. Venir means to come. Yo vengo a la clase. I'm coming to the class, por ejemplo. Let's say them one time, and as you say the word en español, take a look again at the English translation. Repita, cerrar. Cerrar. Comenzar. Comenzar. Empezar. Empezar. Entender. Entender. Pensar. Pensar de. Pensar en. Perder. Perder. Preferir. Preferir. Querer. Querer. Sentir. Sentir. Venir. Venir. So let's see if you can remember any of these at this early point in español. ¿Cómo se dice to close? Repita, cerrar. To begin, that begins with the letter C. Repita, comenzar. To begin, that begins with the letter E. Empezar, repita, empezar. To understand begins with the letter E. Entender. You might be thinking also of comprender, to comprehend. We'll use that as meaning understand. That is not a stem changing verb. ¿Cómo se dice en español to think? More specifically, to think of and to think about. Repita, pensar de. Pensar en. ¿Cómo se dice to lose? Also begins with P. Repita, perder. Perder. To prefer. Repita, preferir. Preferir. To want or to love. Starts with Q. Querer. Querer. To feel. Repita, sentir. Sentir. And to come. Repita, venir. Venir. Now, in a couple of cases, you're going to see that there are two E's. You might think, wow, okay, which E changes to IE? Just keep in mind that it's going to be the E that is closest to the ending. So in empezar, it's the E closest to the AR. Entender, the E closest to the ER. Preferir, the E closest to the IR. Now they're going to scroll by and see if you can call them out before they leave the screen. Preferir means to prefer. Pensar de, to think of. To lose. To think about. To begin. To close. To want or to love. To understand. To come. To begin. To feel. Now see if you can say the Spanish before they fly by. Comenzar. Pensar de, pensar en. Cerrar. Empezar. Entender. Venir. Querer. Sentir. Preferir. Perder. Now let's look at these conjugations. Stem-changing verbs are often referred to as boot verbs. In the chart that you're about to see, the boxes that are shaded in blue highlight the forms of cerrar that have a stem change, and you're going to see that they end up being in the shape of a boot. So to conjugate cerrar, two things that you do. First of all, remember that the E will change to IE in the stem, and then remember that the AR verb endings, the regular ones, will be added. Repita, por favor. Yo cierro. Cierro. Tú cierras. Cierras. Él cierra. Ella cierra. Usted cierra. Repita, nosotros cerramos. Nosotras cerramos. Repita, vosotros cerráis. Vosotras cerráis. Repita, ellos cierran. Ellas cierran. Ustedes cierran. There's the boot. So notice that those are the four forms where the stem, C-E-R-R, if you can see up above, you'll see that's the stem after the AR is chopped off, and that E changes to IE within the stem for the four conjugations in the boot, and the regular AR endings are used. Outside of the boot, nosotros and vosotros remain regular AR verb conjugations. So let's just say the forms of cerrar. Repita, cierro, cierras, cierra, cerramos, cerráis, cierran. Let's try a couple more and see if you can do the conjugations yourself. Preferir. ¿Cómo se dice I prefer en español? Repita, yo prefiero. You, singular informal, prefer. Tú. Repita, prefieres. Él, ella, usted. He, she, you, formal, prefer. Repita, prefiere. We prefer. Nosotros preferimos. Hopefully you got that. You didn't do any stem changing there. How about vosotros? You guys prefer. Repita, preferís. And finally, they or you all prefer. Prefieren. Let's say the forms. Repita, por favor. Prefiero. Prefieres. Prefiere. Preferimos. Preferís. Prefieren. Muy bien. And make sure that you're getting that sound to come out. Ie. Ie. Now let's work on the verb querer. ¿Cómo se dice I want or I love? Yo. Repita, quiero. Tú. Repita, quieres. El, ella, usted. Repita, quiere. nosotros. Repita, queremos, vosotros. ¿Queréis? Ellos, ustedes. Quieren. And let's say those forms. Repita, quiero, quieres, quiere. Queremos, queréis, quieren. Muy bien, un poco de práctica. ¿Cómo se dice I want a new t-shirt? Yo quiero una camiseta nueva. Do you have to put the yo in there? Nope, you could just say quiero. It's understood that that form only goes with the subject pronoun yo. And remember that the adjective new goes after the word t-shirt en español. ¿Cómo se dice the girls begin the homework? Las chicas empiezan la tarea. You could also say las chicas comienzan la tarea. ¿Cómo se dice Julio is not closing the bookstore? Julio no cierra la librería. Did anybody say la biblioteca? Okay, remember, biblioteca is library, librería is bookstore. And finalmente, ¿cómo se dice Miguel and I are coming to the restaurant? Miguel y yo venimos al restaurante. Remember, that's a nosotros form, so it's a regular conjugation. There is no IE change in the nosotros, vosotros. And remember, to the, a, el, contracts to form al restaurante. And there you go, mis amigos. Excelente. Adiós.